It's not everyone's cup of tea to consume an entire podcast. That's why, welcome to the Ranveer Show's highlights channel, TRS Clips. Subscribe and hit that bell icon. We haven't really spoken about Putin much on this particular podcast, and it is, at the end of the day, a Russia-Ukraine themed show because that one geopolitical event has set off so much else in the world. Again, first COVID happening, then this happening. I don't know what's going to happen next. Is Putin going to be alive to see what's going to happen next? Because they say he's got blood cancer. They say that he's sending lookalikes, doppelgangers out, and he himself is actually bedridden. There's all these conspiracy theories about him out there right now. What's the truth in terms of... So how do you look at kind of Putin's angle in this whole war? And I ask you this because I remember the last podcast we did, you had mentioned a line saying that if Russia wants, they can actually take over Ukraine in one shot.
Yes.
But they aren't doing that. So I actually want to know everything about Putin. Because again, as we spoke about early on in the show, it's a few group of men at the top who decide the future of their country and therefore the future of the world in some cases. So let's talk about the man at the top.
So Vladimir Putin came to power about a couple of decades ago. He came to power when his country was in ruins. So after the collapse of the USSR, Boris Yeltsin was in power. And what he did was he put all of the money of the USSR in the hands of a few people, the so-called oligarchs. So the USSR was a collectivized society. Nobody held any private property, but everybody worked and produced resources and the economy. So in effect, the Communist Party was the custodian of the people's money. The wealth they had generated over generations of labor. So all of that wealth was in the custody of the USSR's Communist Party. After the USSR broke up, all of that wealth came into the hands and control of Mr. Boris Yeltsin. And what he did is he parceled out all of this wealth and all the big industries into the hands of a few oligarchs, of a few people who is his cronies. And then these guys proceeded to destroy those industries. So essentially, one could say that Mr. Yeltsin was an agent of the West. And his task was to liquidate the wealth of the USSR so that Russia would never be a threat again. So after he moved on politically, Mr. Putin was appointed to power. It was hoped, I believe, that he would be another puppet, but he turned out to be something very different. And he set about rebuilding the Russian economy. And the oligarchs are still there. Once something is in place, it stays in place, kind of. And they are too powerful to be displaced, so he worked with them. And he slowly rebuilt the economy. It was stabilized first. The Russians were standing in long queues for bread and soup. That's how it was. So Mr. Putin stabilized the economy. After a decade or so, he started rebuilding the military. And by 2014, he took over Crimea because there was something left over from history. And I'm sure this entire Ukraine thing was planned for a decade or so, because it was known what the US was doing, what NATO was doing. It was expanding eastwards relentlessly. So once you come to Ukraine, that's a red line the Russians won't allow. And that's why this entire thing has happened. Now, when it comes to Mr. Putin, he's very secretive. We don't know much about his personal life. He is known to have been married. I think he has 2 daughters. It seems that he was divorced and he has some gymnast girlfriend or whatever. That's not important. That's his personal life. It has nothing to do with us. But now these rumors that you speak about, that he may have blood cancer or some other form of abdominal cancer or something else. Well, there is no evidence for it. It's all coming out from the more or less Western media. We don't really know what's happening. I mean, I'm personally not aware of whether he's sick or he's well, or whether it's all strategic ambiguity like they say. We don't quite know. In case he is not well, then he would possibly, conceivably have planned for his succession, that after me, who comes in? Because if he moves on, if he passes away and a weak leader comes to power, then his 20 years of work will be wasted. So there will be some kind of succession plan in place, which we don't know about. In the Chinese Communist Party, there's a very clear method of succession. You have to come to the top 5 in the party, the Politburo, the Central Committee, and from those guys, one guy is chosen. That's how it is. And it's usually 5 years, but now Mr. Xi Jinping has extended it beyond 5 years. Now, in the case of Mr. Putin, there is no such mechanism that we are aware of. So I'm not sure what the succession plan is. I think he's already crossed 70 years of age. So I'm sure he must have thought about it. But we don't quite know. And maybe it is by design that we don't know, because you should never let the world Never let the world know what you're planning.
And I don't feel you can trust mainstream media when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine situation, which is why I ask you, sir, as a geopolitical expert, what's happening on ground today and what do you think Putin is making of it?
So I try to source my information from various small outlets like Twitter accounts and Telegram accounts and all, in addition to the mainstream picture, so that I get two sides of the perspective. Because in mainstream social media, you don't get the Russian perspective. You only get the Ukrainian and US perspective. So what appears to be happening right now is that the Russians are consolidating their hold on the territories they have captured. And they are inching forward and trying to denazify those regions. So the Azov regiment and all, they are being made to surrender or being wiped out. That's what's happening. They are creating these cauldrons which is encircling the enemy and then wiping them out from inside, asking them to surrender. If they don't surrender, you know what happens. So that sort of thing. So they have not used their air force much. They have a massive air force. The Russians have hardly used their air force. And they have a massively powerful military. But they have been very restrained in their use of power. So it is clear by now that they had limited objectives. They did not want to take over the whole of Ukraine or even half of Ukraine. They only wanted to take over the parts of Ukraine which are Russian-speaking, Russian majority. So that seems to be something they are close to accomplishing. Obviously, the situation is still contested, and the Americans are pouring in weaponry and supplies into Ukraine so that the Ukrainians can keep on fighting. So it looks like this conflict will drag on. The Russians don't want to overwhelm the whole country. It's not something they want to they don't want to overextend their army. So it looks like this conflict will remain a low intensity conflict, like an insurgency for the foreseeable future, and the Americans will fight till the last Ukrainian is alive. That's what it looks like.
I'll give you an analogy from judo, because Putin is also a judoka.
Yes.
In judo, when you're having a match, okay, with someone, suppose I'm fighting with you, no matter whether you're big or you're small, usually a lot of judokas kind of hit the other guy's leg with their own leg. And you kind of throw these little jabs with your leg to just put the guy off balance and to intimidate. And then at the right moment, you throw the person.
Yes.
And you win a judo match by throwing them cleanly. It's like wrestling or holding them down for a while. So I'm perceiving this as his version of hitting the leg of America as much as he can, to just intimidate and kind of put them off guard, and a throw will come. And obviously my next question is, when will that big throw come, according to you? That when is shit gonna break through? Is it going to be when China invades Taiwan properly, or India?
It could be a number of scenarios. I think the Russia-Ukraine situation seems to be stabilizing. It is foolhardy to make predictions there, but it seems to be the way it is, and it may stay that way. If something happens, it could happen most likely in the Indo-Pacific, either India-China or China-Taiwan. These are the two most likely spots where trouble could erupt. If it is India-China, it will happen before 2024. So we could be we could be in for something in the coming months, possibly, if it is to happen. Otherwise, it is Taiwan, which could happen anytime this decade. The Chinese will make a move on Taiwan when they perceive that the time is right, or if they start panicking that we are no longer progressing the way we want to progress, and let's grab what we can before we become too weak. So these are the two main possibilities, the most likely possibilities if something happens. I hope no war ever happens. I would like peace. But yeah, it's either China-India or China-Taiwan. The Russia-Ukraine thing seems to be stabilizing. Will a throw come from Putin's side? We don't know. He is somebody that you can't really predict. So he may also have planned something, but I can't really tell as of today.
So everybody, including the leaders at the top, geopolitical experts, citizens, army generals, are just sitting back and waiting and seeing who flips out first, basically.
Everybody is watching each other warily.